Hi, my name is Deb Weiss-Gelmi, and today's sequence is geared a bit more toward a level 2 Iyengar student. It will include Sirsasasna, headstand, and Sarvangasana, shoulder stand, and a variation of that as well. So you'll need blankets for shoulder stand. So either blankets or towels. If you have maybe 5 towels, bath towels or beach towels would be fine. And then a block or something solid like that, a footstool or something like that. You'll need a strap or maybe a necktie or a belt, and then a chair. If you don't have a folding chair, then a dining room chair is fine as well. And you'll also need a wall. Our first pose is Parshva Supta Padangustasana. So Parshva to the side, Supta reclined, Padangustasana, hand to big toe or foot pose. So first I will demonstrate. I start out in Supta Tadasana, extend through the inner heel, big toe mounds. Little toe side comes back to the outer hip, draw those outer hips in. Lengthen through the pelvis. And then just watching for a moment still, I just bend one leg, put the belt around the foot, extend the foot up toward the ceiling. And the leg that's on the floor, I'm lengthening through the pelvis, through the inner knee, through the inner heel, and big toe mound, lengthening away. The little toe side comes back to that outer hip. And then same with the lifted leg, extending through the inner leg, coming back to the outer leg and finding that grip of the outer hip as I take my leg out to the side. Now if you can put your first 2 fingers on your toe, you can do that instead of the belt. Lengthening the shoulder out toward the foot, but finding the outer left thigh in this case toward the bone, especially at that outer hip. So I'm lengthening through the pelvis of the leg that's on the floor, the right leg in this demo, the left leg, the outer thigh toward the bone, especially near that hip socket. And then lengthening the shoulder out toward the foot. And then I bend that leg to bring the foot back to the floor, and then we would do the other side. So now let's start together. So start in Supta Tadasana, where you lie flat on your back. Lengthen through the inner heels, big toe mound, little toe side comes back, grip that outer hip. Lengthening through that pelvis, bend both legs, have your strap, or your first 2 fingers if you're grabbing the big toe. Bend the right leg in, the knee toward the chest, loop the belt around the foot, extend through the inner heel, big toe mound of this right leg going up, as well as the left leg going straight out along the floor. So we're flowing from the inner thigh, inner knee, inner calf, inner heel, big toe up, and then the little toe side coming down toward that outer hip. And then put the strap in your right hand, and as you take your leg out to the side, the outer right thigh is going toward the bone, especially at that hip socket, the outer right hip. Lengthen through the inner heel, big toe mound on that, softening that inner leg, and then coming back on the outer hip side, the thigh going up toward the ceiling, toward that bone. Supta Padangustasana. And then to bring that leg, or actually let's bend the right leg to take both feet to the floor. So bending the right and the left leg so the feet meet in the middle. Then take the left knee toward the chest, loop the belt around, or the fingers on the big toe. And as you extend through that inner thigh, inner knee, inner heel, big toe mound of the lifted leg, you're doing the same with the right leg along the floor. And with that right leg, extend through the pelvis, through the inner heel, big toe mound, and come back that little toe side to that outer hip. Same with the lifted leg, extend through the inner thigh, inner knee, inner heel, big toe mound, and then the little toe side coming back toward that outer hip. And as you take that leg out to the side, feeling that outer thigh pressing toward the bone. So as you go down, it's more that the outer thigh is going toward the ceiling. So extend through the inner feet. and bring the outer feet up toward the hips. So gripping those two hips. Soften the abdomen, spreading across the pelvis. Lengthening across the pelvis toward that foot that's on the floor. And then to come out, you'll bend both legs, put your feet on the floor, and then roll to your side to come up. Our next pose is Ardha Chandrasana, but we're going to do it twice, and the first time we do it, we'll do it with a variation of the foot. Now, it's not the proper way of doing Ardha Chandrasana, but it's a way to really find information from that outer hip and the rotation of that thigh. So, watch first. I'm going to turn the chair so you can see me from the back. What I'm doing with the foot is, instead of having it go forward, this would be our Ardha Chandrasana. But the one that we're going to do right now is we're going to turn the foot 90 degrees toward the rest of our body. So it's rotating the thigh. It's as though it's forcing to do for the outer hip what we are wanting to do in the regular pose. So it's giving us a heightened awareness of that space. The main thing you have to remember, though, is to not straighten the knee because of the way that our foot is. So as I go down onto the chair, I'm not straightening that knee. So I'm not sure if you can see that in the camera as well, but know that we are not straightening the knee, but just going up into the pose using that hip in the way that we want to. So this is an exaggerated version to help us become aware of that outer hip. Okay, so we'll do it together. And when I come out trying to follow the flow of that foot. So not trying to move the foot while it's in that precarious position. So when you come out, you'll just come on down with that foot. Okay, so let's do it together. So the chair will be on your right, and we'll start with your right foot. Okay, so looking at the chair, your foot is going to go parallel with the chair seat. And then your right arm going down to the chair seat. Now, if this just seems too much for you, you can have your hand straight for a moment just to get the experience a little bit. And so this hip is flowing this way because it really needs to, because of the way the foot is. So this is the hip that we want when we put our foot back to where it's supposed to be for the pose. So my knee is bent, so I'm not hurting my knee, but the hip is rotating tremendously. So really using this pose, this version of the pose, to become aware of your hip in a different way than you're used to. And then we'll do the other side. So now the left foot is parallel with the chair. The left forearm down to the chair, keeping that standing leg fully bent and opening up the hips. So feeling this rotation of this hip, the front thigh going from the inside out tremendously. Finding that awareness of that outer hip that is oftentimes difficult to find. Feeling that hip. And then we'll come out and go to the other side for our more normal Ardha Chandrasana, still supported with the chair. But now the right foot is forward, pointing toward the chair, the right forearm down. Now as we go up, take what you've just learned with the last pose, the outer right hip. The thigh is rotating as though the toes are going toward the wall. The thigh is rotating, and that outer hip, similar to the first pose when we were on the floor and the leg was going out to the side. So finding that outer hip, right at that hip socket, the outer hip, the outer buttock. And so then, before you straighten this leg, take the thigh from the inside out. And as you take it from the inside out, straighten the leg, lengthen through this pelvis as we did in the first pose as well. Extend through the inner heel, big toe mound. Little toe side comes back and gripping that outer hip. So we're working the outer hip on both legs. The one on the bottom, is the one that we gained some extra awareness from the other pose, but also try to translate that to your outer hip up here. So gripping those outer hips, lengthening through the pelvis, extend through the inner heel, big toe mound. Little toe side comes back toward that outer hip. And then, of course, rotating the chest up toward the ceiling. And then we'll come on down and the other side. So left foot forward, left forearm down. Keep the left leg bent until you fully rotate that thigh to straighten the leg. Finding the outer hip. Finding that hip, taking the time and finding the hip. So the standing leg, extend through the inner heel, big toe mound. And the lifted legs extend, lengthen through the pelvis, extending through the inner heel, big toe mound. Little toe side comes back toward that outer hip. So trying to find the grip of both hips. And opening the chest. Ardha Chandrasana, half moon. And then we'll come on out. And you can move the chair. Our next pose is Utthita Trikonasana, triangle pose. We're going to take what we just learned in the last pose with the hips and take it into this pose. So stand in Tadasana, press through the inner heel, big toe mound, lift the side chest up, flow the shoulders through your hands toward the floor. Take your legs wide. And I'm doing it right up against the wall so I can use the wall for information on the hips. Turn your feet to the right. Press through the outer edge of that back foot. And now this right leg, just as we did in the last pose, rotating that thigh, we're going to do in this pose. So I'm rotating the thigh. So the front thigh goes from the inside out. But really turn that thigh like we did in the last pose, almost, so it's almost going to take the foot up off the floor, but then, of course, don't let it. Keep that big toe mound pressing down, but the whole thigh is working to turn and rotate. And then off that, then we'll tip down to the side. So you can put your hand on your shin, top hand on the hip for a moment, roll the chest up. So as the chest and abdomen are rolling up toward the ceiling, the thigh is rolling toward the wall. So this opposite action happening, trying to find that outer hip. And so then the rotation of the last pose, that rotation of that hip, you want happening here. Reach that top arm up toward the ceiling. And then come on out by pressing the outer edge of the back foot to bring you up, toes forward, and to the other side. So press through the outer edge of the right foot, and then the left thigh now is rotating, just as in that last pose. So in the last pose, we had our foot turned. In this case, it'd be toward the wall. So imagine that, and rotate that thigh, top thigh from the inside out, rolling that whole thigh, just until it starts to lift that foot, and then take the big toe mound down. Rotated thigh, and then tip down. Utthita Trikonasana. Lengthen the torso. So feeling that rotation of the leg, that new awareness of that outer hip, and lengthen the torso off that. And then the rotation of the chest and the navel up and the thigh toward the wall. Take that top arm up if you haven't. Press through the outer edge of the back foot to come up. Toes forward. We're going to do it one more time. So let's turn to the right again. And so we put all this focus on the front leg as we were going. So this time make sure that you're pinning the other hip to the wall. So in this case, the left hip to the wall. So let's do it together. But this rotation's still happening, that outer hip understanding, but this hip is staying toward the wall. So rotate that thigh from the inside out. Tip over the right leg, but keep this pinned hip back, almost like you can scoop in that pelvic head there, lifting that up and back toward the wall. So this is open, broadening across the pelvis. And feel that Feel the rotation of the thigh on the right and the pinning back of the hip on the left. And then to come out, press through the outer edge of the back foot. To come up, toes forward and to the other side. Rotation now of that left thigh right up at that hip, but keeping the pinned back on the right. New awareness of those hips. So feeling a spread across the pelvis. And then to come out, press through the outer edge of the back foot, toes forward, fingertips together, and jump or step your feet back together. Our next pose is Virabhadrasana 1, Warrior 1. So watch first. I'm using a chair. Step 1 foot forward and 1 foot back. And to start, we'll keep that heel lifted of the back foot. Okay, so the rotation of the hips that we've been doing, we're going to continue. The top leg of the front leg is going from the inside out, and the back thigh of the back leg is going from the inside out. So first we'll do that, and then the next thing is flowing the back sits bone from the front leg sits bone flows the back thigh to the back knee, and the back leg sits bone is flowing through to that back heel. So lengthening. So two different things going on, and I'll talk you through them together. Step your right leg forward, your left foot back. Have the left toes facing forward, so not the classic stance of our feet at this time. The front leg thigh is rolling from the inside out, so it's that same work we've been doing with that outer hip information that we recently heightened the awareness of, flowing through the thigh to the knee and then to the outer hip. And then the back leg, the back thigh rolling from the inside out. And then the sits bones. So the buttock bones, the right buttock bone, flowing along the back hamstring toward the knee, so softening that space. That's why we want the support of the chair. And then the left leg sits bone, the left sits bone flowing through to that back heel, spreading the sits bones in the pose, lifting the torso up. And then to come out, straighten that front leg and turn to your side. And then we'll bring the feet back together. And now we'll do the left side. So step the left foot forward, the right foot back, keeping the right heel lifted, toes pointing in the same direction, toes of both feet. Using the chair for support. The top thigh of the front leg is going from the inside out, flowing that inner thigh to the knee, and then that outer knee toward the hip. And then the back thigh rolling from the inside out. And then the next part is now the left sits bone flowing through to that inner knee of the back, or that back knee. So flowing along the hamstring toward that back knee, softening that back leg. And then the right sits bone flowing through to the right heel, using the support of the chair, lifting the torso up, feeling those sits bones spread to each leg. And then to come out, turn and stand. And then bring the feet back together. So let's do Virabhadrasana 1 a second time. This time we'll put the heel down and possibly take your arms up. So same focuses, the rotations of the thighs and the spreading of the sits bones. So right foot forward, left foot back, heel lifted to start. Front thigh from the inside out. Back thigh from the inside out. Taking the right sits bone, flowing along the hamstring to the back of the knee, softening that space. Using the muscles in your arms on the chair, but also that outer hip that we've been working on. Back, left sits bone flowing through to that back foot. And then you'll take the heel in the back down. So pressing through that outer heel. And then you can stay here with your hands on here to lift, or if you want to, you can take the arms up. Virabhadrasana 1. And then straighten that leg, toes back to a neutral position, and bring the feet together. And then we'll do your left side forward for our last Virabhadrasana 1. So left foot forward, right foot back, keeping the heel lifted and the back foot for now. Top thigh of that front leg, rolling from the inside out, finding that new awareness of the outer hip. Back thigh of the back leg, rotating from the inside out. Flow the left sits bone through the back of the thigh to the knee, softening that space, the back hamstring, the inner thigh, inner knee, but gripping and using the outer left thigh. And then flowing the right sits bone through to the back heel, lift the torso up. And then for the last bit, you can take the heel down, pressing through the outer edge of the back foot, rotating those back ribs around. You can keep your hands here, or you can lift the arms up, lengthening the front body up. Virabhadrasana 1. And then straighten that leg, toes forward, and join your feet back in Tadasana. Press through the inner heel, big toe mound. Flow the shoulders down. Our next pose is Adho Mukha Svanasana and Eka Pada Adho Mukha Svanasana. So downward facing dog and a one-leg version. So when we do the one-leg version, we're going to continue the work on our hips that we've been doing, including lengthening through that pelvis. So I'll show you really quickly, and then we'll do it together. We'll talk through Adho Mukha Svanasana when we do it together. So first just watch, and I'll show you the one-legged version. So we'll go through our downward dog, then we'll take one leg into the middle, and as we lift the back leg, we'll take that inner thigh up toward the ceiling and lengthening across the front of that pelvis. And then we can think of this pose in the way that we were thinking of the last pose. The standing thigh, in this case the left foot's on the floor, my thigh is rolling from the inside out, just as in the last pose. Softening the inner thigh, but finding that outer hip. And then this lifted leg, the back thigh is rolling from the inside out, lengthening through the inner heel, big toe mound, lengthening across the pelvis. And then we will bring that down and we'll do the other side. So let's do it together. So find your space for Adho Mukha Svanasana. Spread the palms wide. Press through the pointer finger mound, thumb mound sides. You're moving from the little finger side over to the thumb mound side, especially that pointer finger mound and even that middle finger mound. And then curl the toes under, extend and lift those hips up toward the ceiling. Allow the inner heels to descend toward the floor. Press the thighs away from the arms. And then the inner upper arm goes toward the wall behind you, the outer shoulder toward the floor, or in this case the outer shoulder even back toward the feet. Adho Mukha Svanasana. Let the back of the head go completely, pressing those thighs back. And then let's try the Eka Pada version. So take your left foot more toward the center, and we'll lift the right leg, taking that inner thigh up toward the ceiling. So the standing thigh is going from the inside out, the front thigh of the standing leg. The back thigh of the lifted leg is going from the inside out. And as you do that, and you take those actions, imagine those two sits bones going away from each other.
just as when we were spreading in the last pose with our hands on the chair, taking those sits bones away from each other. And then we'll bring that right leg down, more toward the middle of the mat, ready for the left leg to go up. So lift that left leg up, the inner thigh lifting you up, or lifting the leg up. The front thigh of the standing leg, so in this case the right leg, the front thigh is going from the inside out. And then the lifted leg, the back thigh is going from the inside out. And imagine that those two sits bones going away from each other with those actions. And then we'll bring the feet back together and take your knees to the floor.
Our next pose is Prasarita Padottanasana. So you might need some blocks in front of you. It's this pose where we go forward in this way. So let's do it together and I'll talk you through it, but just get your blocks if you know you need it for this pose. So start in Tadasana, press through the inner heel, big toe mound. Lift the front armpit chest up. Flow the shoulders down. Flow your trapezius muscles down your back, through the inner arm and through the fingers down. So open the chest. Soften the face. And then jump or step your feet wide. For Prasarita Padottanasana, put your hands onto your hips, point your elbows back. Lift that side chest up. Now in this pose, as you go forward, your inner thighs will go toward the wall behind you as you lengthen up off the hips. Lengthen, 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 and then your hands will go down with your heel of your hand in line with your big toe. And then your hips in line with your feet. So you don't want your hips to, or you don't want your buttocks to drag back behind your feet. Okay, so we're going to stay in this concave version, and what we're looking to do right now is to feel those sits bones spreading. So the left sits bone goes with the left leg, the right sits bone goes with the right leg. Softening the inner thighs, press through the outer edge of the feet, but then also feel the inner edges. So softening the inner thighs, taking each sits bone with its respective leg. Left sits bone to the left, right sits bone to the right. Soften the inner thigh. Soften and spread the low back. Lengthen the torso forward. The work that we typically do in the pose as well. So back armpit to front armpit, lengthening the torso forward. And then to come out, put your hands onto your hips, inner thighs flow back as you lift up, and then bring those feet back together for Tadasana. Our next pose is Sirsasasna, headstand. So I'll do a quick demonstration, but if you have seen the video a bunch of times, then you can just start at the same time I am doing the demo. For Sirsasasna, fold your mat in half, and then in half again, and place the mat against the wall. Sirsasasna. I'm first going to do a quick little demo. So I clasp my fingers together, getting that webbing together, put the knuckles against the wall, my elbows underneath my shoulders, I press the forearms down, lengthen the wrist side toward the little finger, and then place the crown of the head in front of the hands. So I lift the inner shoulder, place the crown of the head in front of the hands, and then pressing the forearms down, lift the inner shoulder, curl the toes under, lift the knees up. And then walk in.
And then take one leg up, and as you go up, take that inner thigh up. Press through the forearms, lift the inner shoulders up. Lengthen the top buttock, the buttock that's closest to the back. Lift up away from the low back. You can take your feet 6 inches apart, lift that buttock up, and then bring those feet back together. Extend through the inner heel, big toe mound. And then if you're doing Sirsasasna away from the wall, of course you can take your legs away from the wall. And then to come down, one leg down and then the other. And then we'll go into Adho Mukha Svanasana, or Adho Mukha Virasana. So now your turn.
Clasp the hands together, knuckles to the wall, elbows underneath the shoulders. Lengthen from your wrist through to the inner, that little finger. Press the forearms down, lift the inner shoulders up.
Place the crown of the head in front of the hands. Curl the toes under. Walk the feet in. Take your shoulder blades away from the wall. Kick your leg up. And it's okay if it takes a couple times to get up. Extend through the inner heel, big toe mound. If you're not using the wall, then you'll just do the headstand that you're used to. Extending through the inner heel, big toe mound. Bring the little toe side back towards your outer hips. If you're using the wall, extend through the heels or up, scrubbing those feet up the wall. Lengthening, lengthening, lengthening. Take your buttocks away from the low back. Lifting up, like someone is holding on to your feet and lifting you up and lengthening up toward the ceiling. Soften the face, of course. Press through the forearms, lift the inner shoulders up, even thinking of taking the collarbones up. Lift that top buttock away from the low back. Sometimes it helps to take the feet apart about 6 inches or so. Lift that top buttock away from the low back and then bring the feet back together. Soften the face. Press the forearms down, lift the inner shoulder up, shoulder blades into the back. Your back body should be nowhere near the wall, your upper back. The only thing that should come near the wall if you need to is your feet. But the shoulder blades are away from the wall. The inner shoulder lifting up, shoulder blades toward the chest. Lifting that buttocks up off the low back, the top buttock, the buttock that's closest to the low back. Extend through the inner heel, big toe mound. Little toe side comes back toward those outer hips. Soften the face. So this pose in your daily practice, you want to work toward 5 minutes. Then you can start playing with some fun variations. So as you're in the pose, sometimes things will start to let go that you don't want to let go. So be sure to press the forearms down, lift the inner shoulders up. That top buttock lifted up toward the ceiling. Spread the space in your abdomen. Extend through the inner heel, big toe mound. Little toe side comes back toward those hips. Draw the outer hips together. Soften your face. Remembering, if your shoulder blades drop toward the wall behind you, it's time to come down. The shoulder blades need to be away from the wall. If you do come down before I do, go into Adho Mukha Virasana, downward facing hero's pose. Your feet together, your knees wide, and your ribs in between. Lengthening the arms out. Press the pointer finger mound down, lifting the forearms up off the floor. Lengthening your torso. Be sure that your fingers are not clenching in this pose. In headstand if you're still there. The knuckles and the fingers are relaxed. Press the forearms down, lift the inner shoulder up. Extend through the inner heels of those legs. Shoulder blades away from the wall. If that lift of your chest starts to collapse, you need to come down. If the shoulders are dropping, you need to come down. Everything is lifting up. Working for, in this pose in the beginning, you're working toward equal weight on the three parts, the two forearms and the head. So you don't want all the weight on the head and you don't want all the weight on the forearms. Equal weight between the three, and then lifting up off that. That upper back really needs to do its work. In, which another way of saying it is away from the wall and lifting up. And then when you are ready to come down, you can come down one leg at a time and to go into Adho Mukha Virasana. So you can scoot away from the wall. So you can come on down, scoot away from the wall so you can have your arms straight. The outer thighs rolling away from the midline. And then reaching through, resting the forehead on the floor. Make sure that your forehead is resting. If you need to make a fist under your head or something, that's okay. You just need to have your forehead resting. Lengthen from the hips all the way out through the hands. It's hard to see with this bulky mat, but lift the forearms up off the floor, elbows up off the floor, outer shoulders down. Rest the forehead. Outer arms toward each other and spread the upper back. And then we'll come up.
The next pose is Sarvangasana and Ekapada Sarvangasana. So you'll need a mat, 3 blankets or the equivalent in towels, and a chair. So this is how we'll set up. We'll have the mat folded in 2, scooted up against the wall. And then the blankets, the fold edge of the blankets, right at the edge of the fold edge of the mat. So 3 of those. The fold edges neat at the edge. So if you have a fringe, it would go toward the wall. You want the neat edge of the blankets at the edge. And then with the edges of the blankets at the edge of the mat, then we take the whole setup toward the wall. So there's about 6 inches or so from the wall. And then the chair will measure once we're lying down. So first watch. I lie down on the blankets and roll. So I'm my shoulders are a couple inches from the edge of the blanket and my head is on the floor. And then I reach my arms out to measure where the chair is because we'll be using that. And then I lift myself up, roll the shoulder under, flowing my shoulder toward the hand, roll the shoulder under, flowing my shoulders toward the hand, working the upper back away from the wall, the buttock away from the wall, placing my hands on my back. And then I take a leg up and a leg up for Sarvangasana.
And I'll talk you through this while you're in it as well, but just for a quick demo, I want to show you the Ekapada. So in this case, I'll pin my left foot up toward the ceiling, and as my right leg comes down, that front thigh of the right leg is rolling from the inside out. And as I do that, that outer hip cuts up until I get that foot down to the chair. And then I have the balls of the toes on the chair, and then I can lift this thigh up, especially the outer hip, and then extend through the inner heel of that lifted leg and take the inner knee back. And then I can use the leverage of that top leg to bring the leg that's down up. And then just quickly showing you the other side, I keep that right leg pinned up, bringing the left leg, that thigh rolls from the inside out, especially cutting up that outer hip. So getting the toes down is really nice because then you have more leverage to lift up, cut the outer hip up, and the lifted leg, the inner knee goes toward the wall behind you. And then use leverage from that other leg to bring both legs up. And then with the wall there, you can just take your feet back to the wall and slide out. Okay, so now your turn. So you'll lie down on the blankets and then roll onto the blankets, onto your back, measure your chair, grabbing the front legs of the chair to measure it. Lift yourself up, take your shoulders, roll them under and under, flow those shoulders toward the hands. Take your back, your upper back away from the wall, your buttocks away from the wall. Flow the hands, flow the shoulders toward the hands. And then put your hands on your back, take a leg up, and then the other leg up. So starting in Sarvangasana. Extend through the inner heel, big toe mound. Soften the inner thighs. So first, for Ekapada Sarvangasana, we'll keep the left leg up in the air, pinning that, like find a spot on the ceiling, keep that left leg there. And as you bring the right leg down, roll that front thigh of the right leg from the inside out until those toes, try to stand on the balls of the toes on the chair. And then once the balls of the toes are there, lift that front thigh up toward the ceiling. Rolling that front thigh from the inside out and cutting that outer right hip up toward the ceiling. And then that lifted leg, the inner knee goes back. It really happens at the whole thigh level. The outer thigh goes forward. If you do practice this pose with your toe mound going all the way to the floor, of course you're welcome to do that. And then we'll switch to the other side. So take your left leg back a little bit to bring that right leg up. Back to Sarvangasana. Find a spot on the ceiling for the right foot to line with as you take your left leg down. The front thigh of the left leg going from the inside out till you get those toes down to the chair. Roll the front thigh of that left leg from the inside out, cutting that outer left hip up toward the ceiling. And then again, of course, if your foot goes to the floor, you can do that pose. The lifted leg, inner thigh, goes toward the wall behind you. Moving the front thigh of that left leg from the inside out, cutting the outer left hip up, and then using the right leg to go back a little bit to bring that left leg up. And then you can come out by putting your feet on the wall and then sliding off the blankets until it's just your pelvis on the blankets. Your shoulders are on the floor. Soften the abdomen, soften the face. Flow your shoulders to your hands. And then we'll get ready for Shavasana. So you can roll to your side, push yourself up. Lie your mat out flat and set up for Shavasana. If you want a little something for your head, you can put a blanket there. So with your knees bent and your feet on the floor, take the flesh of your buttocks away from the low back. Take your leg out one at a time. And then splay the legs to the side. Flow the shoulders toward the hands, taking the shoulders away from the ears. And then completely let go. From the top of your head all the way down to your feet. Let go of muscles. Soften the muscles around your eyes and your cheeks. Soften the muscles around your jaw. Unhinge your lower jaw from your upper jaw. Allowing for a little space between your upper and lower teeth, but keep the lips slightly together. Very gently spread across the chest, flowing from your shoulders down to your half-open hands. Let go of all tension and muscle use in your shoulders and neck and chest. Soften your abdomen, flow through your inner heels, flow through your inner thighs, your inner knees, to your inner heels, and let the legs just splay to the side, completely letting go. To begin to come out, bend your arms, put your hands onto your front body. Bend your left leg, put your foot on the floor. Draw your right arm up and over your head. And to roll to the side, push off your left leg. Don't shift your hips, but leave the work to that left leg. Roll yourself to your side. Have your knees together for comfort. And then roll that top shoulder down to push yourself up into a seated position. Namaste.